Hi guys, Mike here from Fire Masters, and today we're going to be talking about the Fire Cage by Savage BBQ, aka The Beast. This is by far one of the most versatile barbecues I've ever come across. It's based on the Argentinian Asado design. It's made of mild steel, completely powder coated, and all of these accessories are 100% modular, which means they can come in and out around the barbecue depending on your requirements. So for example, you've got these floating grills which can move up and down depending on what type of cook you're doing. You've got your authentic South American plancha over here. You've got your rotisserie with a motor on this side. You've got your Tuscan grill over here. You've got a fire basket at the back, also known as an ember maker. And then you've got your meat hooks, which can be moved around as well, depending on what type of cook you're doing. It does also come with an oven box, which slides in and out, which we don't have here today because it's actually still being manufactured, but we'll do a separate piece on that in the future. Okay guys, so today we're going to be demonstrating how to use the fire cage for catering purposes, i.e. cooking for a mass amount of people at the same time, which is really what it's designed for. So we're going to be doing a Big Daddy rump steak on the Tuscan grill. At the same time, we're going to be doing some chicken thighs on the rotisserie. We'll also be doing a 1 kg cut of venison on the meat hook. And finally, we'll be showing you how to do some wood-fired roasted veggies on the floating grill. And we'll be doing all of this at the same time. All right, let's get started. So I'm putting two larger Camille logs as the base, and then I'm using the smaller skewered logs on top of that. As I mentioned before, these ones have been split so they'll ignite quickly. What we're going for is a slightly quicker fire here, as we need to get going with the piece of venison rather quickly, but we also don't want there to be too much heat underneath that, because that's more of a slower cook. So what we'll do is use these smaller logs, adding to the fire frequently and regulating the temperature what we need it, as opposed to just getting a raging fire underneath it and potentially burning the food. In terms of fire lighters, we're going to use these Flamers natural fire lighters, basically wood shavings compiled with a little bit of natural wax. They're really good. You only need one per fire, and they emit basically very little smoke, and they've got no chemicals in them, which is great. What's also nice about the skewered logs, the smaller split ones, is that you can use them as kindling if you need to help get your fire going. I also like to pop just one or two down the center of the fire, which will help it along. Right, so while that fire is going, we're going to build the fire on this side as well. As I said, this is primarily a skewered fire. Smaller logs, we're going to have a lot more control over the heat, being able to regulate the heat up and down as we need for the low and slow cook. Okay guys, both of our fires are going now. They're going to need about 45 minutes or so to break down into coals ready for cooking. So in the interim, we're going to head across to the table and start preparing our meat. Alright guys, so our fires are going. We're inside the kitchen now. We've got quite a bit of a spread here, which I'll just talk you through. We've got a 1 kg venison rump from the venison guys. We're going to prep that, and then we're going to cook that using one of the meat hooks on the fire cage. We've got a 500 gram Big Daddy rump steak with a nice thick piece of fat on the end. We're going to be doing that on the Tuscan grill. We've got some chicken thighs. We're going to season these, put them on the rotisserie, and do those slowly over the skewered coals. We've got a variety of different spices and rubs here, which I'm going to talk you through as well. And then we've got our veggies. Now, for most of you, you may not have tried wood-fired veggies before. Today we're going to show you how. It's really simple. We've got some peppers, some brinjals, we've got some large mushrooms, which we're going to wrap in foil and do directly on the coals. We've got some sweet corn, or as we like to call them in South Africa, millies. These are brilliant on the braai. And then we've also got some pineapples. So if you've not had wood-fired roasted pineapple before, it's something that you really should try, and we'll show you how to do that today as well. Alright, so let's get going. We're going to start off with the venison rump. So this has already been prepped by Guy Trulock of the Venison Kitchen and the Venison Guys. You guys know him, he's been in some of our videos before. How we're going to prep this is really, really simple. We're just going to use a little bit of olive oil drizzled over the cut of meat. So just a little bit of olive oil. I'm going to rub that in. And then we're going to use a little bit of spice on top of this. Alright, so we've just drizzled some olive oil over our cuts of venison. We're now going to add some of this rub, Moroccan minted herby blend by All Seasons Barbecue. It's really, really great. We've used it before on a number of different barbecues and braais. It's awesome with venison and also really good with lamb. So we're going to sprinkle a little bit of this over and then we're going to put it onto the fire. Alright, so that's it. It's really simple. We're going to let this rest for about 45 minutes while we let the fire get ready, and then we're going to put it onto one of these meat hooks and we're going to cook it over the coals. Okay, next we've got the 500 gram rump steak. This is also a really, really simple cut of meat to cook. It is nice and big and thick, so it's going to go really nicely on that Tuscan grill, which is much lower to the coals. You're going to get that high heat, so we're really going to be searing it. Today we're going to be using some of this rub. It's called Bull Dust by Rum and Q. The guys over at Rum and Q sent me this a couple of weeks ago. I've not tried it before. We're going to give it a bash today and see how it works out. So again, first we're going to drizzle some olive oil. So that's it, really simple prep that's ready for the fire. Next we're going to move on to the chicken. So for the chicken, we're going to keep it pretty simple. We're going to be using some lemon, a little bit of salt and pepper, and then we're going to put it onto the rotisserie and we're going to let that cook slowly over the skewered. So that's really what we want to get, the skewered smoky flavor coming through into the chicken. I've done this before a few times. It tastes really, really good. I don't want to overpower the chicken with any other spice. I really want to just get that braai wood flavor coming through. So that's what we're going to do. Right guys, so with the chicken it's really easy. You want a few lemons, just cut them in half like this and squeeze that fresh lemon juice over your chicken. It's going to add just a little bit of a lemon zesty flavor to it, which in my opinion complements the braai wood smoke. So I'm using chicken thighs for this. I find they work really well on the fire cage rotisserie. I have also attempted full birds before, so full chickens, and they obviously take a little bit longer. There's a slightly different level of skill involved in getting that right, but for a beginner level, chicken thighs, any chicken thighs, are perfect for this kind of cook. Right, so it's that simple. On top of that, we're going to put a little bit of salt. I'm going to use fine salt for this one. It just holds to the meat a little bit better. Just a little bit of ground black pepper. Right, that's simple. A little bit of lemon juice, salt and pepper. I'm going to let that rest for about 30 minutes, then we're going to put it onto the rotisserie and put that over the hot coals. Okay, next I'm going to show you how to prepare the vegetables. So we've got peppers, green, yellow, red. We've got a couple of sweet peppers here as well. All we're going to do is cut these straight down the middle. We're going to take out the inside, all the pips and seeds and the stuff that you don't really want, and we're going to be left with just the hollow, which is going to go directly onto the braai grid. Then we've also got our mealies, which we're going to coat in a little bit of butter, some salt and pepper, put onto the braai grid. We've got our brinjals. We're going to cut these, coat these in a little bit of olive oil, again onto the braai grid. And our mushrooms. The mushrooms we're actually going to hollow out. We're going to stuff them with some butter, salt and pepper, put them back together again, wrap them in foil, and put those directly onto the coals. And they steam, poach if you will. Okay, next we'll do the brinjal. Again, really simple. You just want to cut it into slices, not too thin, not too thick. Aim for, I'd say, 3 to 4 slices per brinjal. Again, it depends on the size of the brinjal you have. If it's too thin, it might just disintegrate on the braai, depending on how hot it is. If it's too thick, it doesn't cook very well. So it takes a bit of practice, but you'll get it to that point where it's just right. So these ones are about 10 mils or 1 centimeter thick, which I think will be adequate for what we're going to do today. Right, from there it's really simple. You're just going to, again, drizzle it with olive oil. Olive oil seems to be the magic ingredient with this cook, but it works really well. So I've just got this dish over here. Light drizzle. Coat it into the dish. Alright, next up, mealies, also called sweet corn around the rest of the world, but the South Africans will know there's nothing better than a mealie on the braai. Again, really simple to do. You just need a little bit of butter, real butter preferably, not marge, and all you're going to do is just coat your mealie like that. Get that butter all the way around. What that's going to do when it goes onto the hot grid, obviously it's going to melt, and all that melted butter is going to go into the vegetable itself, just adding to the flavor. The rest of the flavor obviously comes from the braai smoke itself, which again is, it really is the main ingredient when it comes to wood-fired vegetables on a wood-fired braai. The braai smoke is really what's giving it all of its flavor. Right, so we've coated it with some butter. Next we're going to just drizzle a little bit of salt. Right, and just a couple of sprinkles of salt. Again, I've used fine salt for this one. It just sticks to the vegetable a lot better than sea salt. And we'll finish off with just a little bit of black pepper. Get all of that onto the mealie. Okay. Alright, so finally we're going to finish off by preparing these mushrooms. These aren't regular mushrooms, as you can see. These are giant mushrooms. And all we're going to do is we're going to cut out the center. We're going to stuff it with a little bit of butter, salt and pepper, close it up, wrap it up in some foil and put it directly onto the braai coals where it's going to cook. You can stuff it with whatever you want. I've done it with cream cheese, different flavors, of course. You can put grated cheese in there. You can put bacon bits in there. You can put various spices. It all depends on your own preference. So I encourage you to experiment a little bit at home, but this is essentially how you would do it. So just very carefully cutting from the outside into the center. There we go. It just pops off like that. And you've got that hollow piece in the middle. Sometimes the knife will go through and pierce the bottom. That's not a train smash because it's going to be wrapped in foil anyway, so all the juices that are going to be created during the cook will still be retained within the tin foil. So that's one. So again, try and use real butter if you can. It's always better. Just a tablespoon or so in the center. What that's going to do is, just add flavor to the mushroom. You can also, at this point, add garlic, in which case you're going to have a garlic butter mushroom. We're going to go with just plain butter for today. Some salt, and some pepper, and then the tops go in. It's that simple. So depending on how much stuffing you end up putting into these mushrooms, for example, bits of bacon, etc., will also determine, how high the top is. You don't want the top sitting too high. You want it sort of flush with the mushroom. So just watch how much stuffing you put in there. Okay, next we're going to wrap these up with some foil. There we go. Really simple. Try and give yourself this little bit of foil at the top, because we're going to use that as a handle when moving it around on the coals. You want to be able to pick it up quite easily, not necessarily with your fingers, but with the tongs. If you don't have that, it means you're trying to grip it with the tongs and you could tear the foil, in which case all the juices come out, which you don't want. Here we go. Those are ready to go. And I think we are ready to head out to the braai and see how it's going. Let's check it out. Okay guys, so our venison rump has been marinating in this spice and olive oil for the last 45 minutes. Our skewered coals are pretty much ready to start cooking this now. So we're going to pop it into the meat hook, which it's not that complicated, but please be careful if you're trying this for the first time. Right, so through one side and out the other. Make sure it goes all the way through. Try not to take out a finger in the process. And we're going to hang that now from the grid. Alright, so there it is. It's a 1 kilo venison rump on the meat hook, about 50 centimeters above our skewered coals. We've got some good heat there, but not too hot. Obviously there's no flames licking up, which could burn the cut of meat. So we're just going to regulate those coals down there, keep their temperature consistent, and it's basically going to cook very slowly. At some point we'll put on some of our whiskey wood chips to add some additional flavor to it, and then we'll take it off in a couple of hours. Alright guys, so we've moved outside now. We've got the braai going here, venison's hanging on the meat hook. I'm just going to show you how to prep the chicken in order to put it onto the rotisserie. So we've got our chicken thighs. What we need to do is put a hole through the center, because you won't be able to put it directly onto the rotisserie without it. So I just use a small pointed knife like this. Again, be really careful if you're inexperienced with the knife. Please make sure you don't cut your finger off. And straight through the fleshy part of the chicken. You just give it a twist, turn it 360 a few times, get that hole in the middle. Okay, there we go. We've now got a hole through the center of each of these chicken thighs, and we're going to put them onto the rotisserie, which is it's a 1.2 meter long pole like this. First thing we need to do is put the rotisserie forks on the one side. So you slide that on, and then you tighten it using the bolt. And the idea is the chicken goes on next, and then the other fork comes on at the end to hold it in place. So that's what we're going to do. If you can, use the rotisserie forks to try and pierce the chicken to hold it in place. Right, so all the chicken is on. Lastly goes on the rotisserie fork, and then again try and pierce the chicken where you can. Right, you want that as tight as possible. At the same time, tighten the bolt. So at this point it looks like it's being held in place, which it is to a certain degree. But once you put it on the fire and it starts turning, there's a chance that the chicken might loosen up a bit. So even though it looks like it's tight, you want to get it as tight as possible. So I'm going to push it even tighter. So for that I'm going to put it down. And really tighten it as much as you can on either side. You may want to use a pair of pliers for this, but you really don't want those rotisserie forks to be moving. If they start moving over the hot coals, it just means you've got to get your hands over there to tighten them. If you've got fire gloves, that's not a problem. If you don't, you need to be very quick. Alright, so that's ready to go onto the braai. I'm now going to take this rotisserie pole, hook it up to the rotisserie motor, and then I'm going to show you how to manage the coals underneath it. Alright, so we're ready to hook up this rotisserie. At this point you need to be very mindful that this fire cage is going to be really, really hot. It takes a little bit of skill to do this on your own. Normally it helps if you've got a second person standing by the motor to just help guide it in. But essentially what you want to do is get the pole behind this center pole here, like that. And you've got to just carefully... Right. So there we go, it's in the motor. Right, and the other side just carefully goes into there, and then we're ready to switch on the motor. So these motors come supplied with the fire cage. They're electrically powered, so just plug it into a wall or an extension cable, and it's really simple, on and off. So there we go, now it's on. Alright, so the rotisserie is going. What you now need to do is manage the coals underneath it. You don't want it to get too hot under there, or you're just going to burn the chicken. You also don't want it to get too cold, or it's just not going to cook properly. So with every fire cage you get one of these cool things. You can just use a pair of tongs if you want to, but this is essentially for managing your coals, scraping it along the base of the barbecue. So that's what we're going to do now. Right, so we just need a few coals underneath, and as these coals slowly die down, we'll pull more from the back. Alright, so there's our venison, there's our chicken. Both of those are going to take some time to cook. It'll be at least an hour before we need to check on them again. So we're just going to leave those. I think now let's go get our veggies, get those on the braai, and then we're going to go on to the rump steak. Alright, so here we've got our veggie platter. Really, really easy. The peppers you want to put face down or upside down, directly on the grid. Same with the mealies, our butter and salt and pepper coated mealies. You want those to get some good heat. And then we've got our mushrooms. Our mushrooms we aren't going to put onto the grid, we're going to put them actually onto the base of the barbecue. So I'll show you how we do that. You don't want them directly on the coals at this stage because the coals are very hot. But the base of this braai or this barbecue is also very, very hot. So those are going to cook just fine there where they are. We can move them around throughout the cook as we need to. Alright, so at this stage, most of the food's on the braai. All we have to do is the steak, which we're going to do right at the end because that's not going to take very long. Between now and then, it's all about coal management. We need to maintain the temperatures for the various pieces of food. So venison and chicken, we don't want that getting too hot. We can have some high temperature here for the veggies. We've got quite a lot of coals underneath the veggies at this point. I'm actually going to move some of those underneath the venison because at some point the heat under the venison is going to start dropping. And if I put some new logs on there, what it's going to do is create some flames, which will essentially burn the meat, which I don't want to do at this stage. Towards the end, we'll do that just to finish it off with a bit of flames. So I'm going to take just 1 or 2 logs from here. Don't need too many. It should be fine for now. In half an hour or so, I'll add another one. So you want to make sure the veggies have got some good heat beneath them. This grid's quite high up at the moment because we've got some good heat underneath. As the fire beneath starts to die down over the next hour or so, we can lower this grid, which is a great thing about this. We've got these multiple levels here, so you'll see we'll lower this 2 or 3 times before we finish this cook. But for now, we're going to leave those exactly where they are. Alright guys, so we've been cooking for about an hour now. Chicken's cooking really nicely. Slowly, it's going to be really soft by the time we take it off. I'm just going to take another bit of lemon, sprinkle that over the top. Keep the chicken nice and moist. Depending on what type of flavor you're doing yourself, you could put a little bit of olive oil over it. But like I said, for this one, we're just going to use lemon and braai smoke. It's starting to smell amazing. Right, they can keep going. Then what we're going to do with the venison is we're going to use some of our whiskey wood chips. They've been soaking in water for a bit. So you'll recognize this packet. This is how they come. These are Scotch whiskey barrels that have been broken down into chips. They're sort of 1 centimeter pieces like this. They've been soaking in water for about 10 minutes. What we're going to do now is just put that directly onto the hot coals underneath the venison, and then we're going to drop the venison a bit just so that all of that smoke, that whiskey barrel smoke, can infuse into the meat. Ideally, you want a barbecue with a lid to get the best results from these wood chips. So for this one, I'm using a lot more wood chips than I normally would, just to make sure that we're capturing all of that smoke. Right, so now we're going to move this floating grill just down 1 level. Go. You can smell that whiskey flavor coming off of those wood chips. So we'll leave that there for a bit. Right, next we're going to put our pineapples on. We're going to put our aubergines up with the vegetables, and then we're going to start thinking about doing our rump steak. Right, next we're going to do our wood-fired pineapple. So again, we've got our meat hooks that come with the fire cage. It's quite simple. Just hook it into the side like that, it goes in quite easily. And then again, hook it directly onto the grid. Carefully, not to burn yourself. Right, there's one. And two. So the heat from the coals will slowly roast these. We'll essentially have those as a dessert after the meal. Right. And if you have a look over to our venison, which we've lowered just a bit, we're really capturing all of that smoke from the whiskey chips now. Some of it's actually drifting across onto the chicken, but we're mainly getting sea cobble's flavor onto the chicken. And I think that's going to taste amazing when we take that off. Right, and the last of the veggies, we've got our aubergines that have been soaking in a bit of olive oil. And again, those just go on the top. They don't need very high heat. So we'll position these with the rest of our veggies. They take a lot less time to do than the peppers. That's why they're going on a bit late. And then if we check our peppers, those are doing quite nicely. We can turn all of those. Got some good heat under here. Right, we don't want to forget about our mushrooms, so we're going to just give these a little bit of a turn every now and then. I can feel they're getting nice and soft in there. They do take some time. So next up, we're going to put on the Tuscan grill, get this nice and hot, ready for the big finale, the 500 gram Big Daddy rump steak. Well, now our camildering coals are going to be piping hot under there, so we'll allow that some time just to heat up the surface of the grill. In a second, we're going to bring our veggies down a level as well, and then we'll put the steak on. Right, so at this stage, we're going to lower the floating grill just down one level. Obviously, as our coals are breaking down, they're slowly losing heat as we go past the 2-hour mark. And so we're going to need to get a little bit more heat on these veggies just as we finish off. So that's one of the benefits of this fire cage as well. You can increase and decrease the heat by just moving the grid as opposed to playing around with the fire too much. Okay guys, fire cage has been on for about 2.5 hours now. Venison is looking great, the chicken's looking amazing. Our wood roasted veggies on top are ready. Last thing to go on is our 500 gram rump steak, which we're going to do on the Tuscan grill. We've got some nice hot camildering coals under there with just a little bit of flame is what we want. So I'm hoping we're going to get a good sizzle on this. Okay. So I guess by now you guys can tell why this thing has the nickname The Beast. It's a massive piece of kit. It's incredibly versatile. I mean, look how many different things we've done in here today, and that's just me on my own. So in terms of a catering grill, if you've got 2 or 3 people on this or something even bigger, you could be catering for 40, 50 people quite easily. I mean, what we've done today will easily cater for 10 to 15 people. Obviously, heat is the important thing here. You want to be using good fuel. Braai wood is the best. It's the only thing that we use. If you can't be using braai wood, then you need to be using a really, really good lumpwood charcoal. Namibian charcoal would probably be the best. But you also are going for that wood-fired flavor, especially on the steak, the chicken, the venison. So once we take this all off, you'll have an idea of what it's all going to look like at the end. Okay guys, so we're going to talk a little bit about these veggies. These are pretty much done now. They've cooked for well over an hour at a relatively low heat, starting up here, and then we move it down slowly as the coals start to break down. But you can see that aubergine is done. It's nice and soft. It's not too dry. It's obviously what the olive oil was for. These peppers are looking really great. Again, the key is that they're soft and there's a little bit of black on the edges, and underneath, if you've cooked peppers before, you'll know what a cooked pepper looks like. But these ones are done, and they're going to have that awesome wood-fired braai smoke flavor. And then of course our millies over here, these are also done. Coating them in the butter was key because it's kept them nice and moist. They haven't burnt on the outside. They're looking really good. I'm looking forward to trying these in a second. I'm going to flip this thing off the fat now. Right, this steak is looking amazing. I think we're going to take it off now, let it rest for a bit. Right, next to come off with the veggies, and then we're going to take a look at the venison. Alright guys, so we're going to check this 1 kilo piece of venison. It has been on there for about 3 hours. To be fair, 3 hours might not have been long enough, as I can still see it's a little bit bloody on the top side. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to just cut it up a bit, and we're going to sear it on that Tuscan grill just to finish it off. Right, so that's been on there now for about 5 minutes, which I think would have finished it off quite nicely. We're going to let it rest for a bit. Come back for our pineapples. We'll take our mushrooms off at the same time. And then last but not least, we've got our rotisserie chicken. Just remember guys, these things are going to be really hot, so if you don't have fire gloves, use a cloth, not your bare hands, unless you've got skin like leather, which you can see that those have roasted really nice on that side. So let these rest for a bit. Let's turn it off. Right, that's off. Again, gloves or a cloth, this thing is going to be very, very hot. Alright guys, this will be very hot, so you're going to have to loosen the bolts, get the top rotisserie fork off without burning your fingers. One, and then the chicken should just slide off like so. Oh, this chicken is so nice and soft, juicy, just sliding off this rotisserie so nicely. Oh, look at that. Wow. Alright guys, everything's looking absolutely amazing, smelling amazing. We're going to take a peek inside this foil, see what the mushrooms are looking like. You can already see they're nice and soft. Look at that, soft, juicy. Slice that up, it's going to be delicious. So there you have it, guys. That was the fire cage by Savage BBQ. I think now you can tell why it's called the Beast. I mean, we did so many different types of food in that one cook. It took us 3 hours. We did our venison, low and slow. We've got a variety of wood-fired veggies. We've got our rotisserie chicken, and of course we've got our rump steak seared at the end. Not to mention our roasted pineapples. I mean, we catered for quite a few people here today. We could have done it for a lot more, and so can you. So check out Savage BBQ. They got an Instagram page, they got a website, and until next time, we'll see you soon. Keep those fires lit. Cheers.